Hello there. For week 22, for the week of June 2nd to the 8th, I'm going to do an entire decade um, for this week. The 1920s happened right after World War One, also known as the Great War. The Great War, or World War One, whatever you like to call it, really boosted the American economy. And after the war, America really prospered during the 1920s, um, mainly from like the end of World War One to like 1929 when the stock market crashed. I'm just going to go over the main um, culture um, topics for the decade, and that's basically will be it for this video. I'm just going over the main culture topics. Prohibition really started in the 1920s. It started really in 1917. In 1917, they enacted a Prohibition Act, um, and it passed in 1917 as for the 18th Amendment. Um, it basically prohibited the sale and drinking of alcohol in the United States. Um, that, however, did not stop. Um, elite did not stop drinking altogether. There were illegal spots you can go to called speakeasies, where you can drink. They'd have illegal beverages, and you know you could drink without anyone knowing it. And even the politicians did it, believe it or not. Those who banned it, those who banned the sale of alcohol and drinking of alcohol, they actually went to some of these speakeasies and had a great time. Um, a lot of, well, one of the really downsides to Prohibition is that a lot of mafia gangsters, mob bosses, really profited during this time. And during Prohibition, it's really when the mob makes most of their money. Like, for instance, you have the gangster Al Capone. He makes a lot of his earnings during this time with illegal booze, um, lots of speakeasies in Chicago, and tons of money pouring in, because even though alcohol is illegal at the time, people still want to drink it. And believe it or not, the strange part is, even though during Prohibition, when alcohol was illegal, you even have people who weren't drinking alcohol before Prohibition drinking alcohol during Prohibition. So that only shows you that if you make something illegal, it's going to become popular. The 1920s is also known as the Jazz Era. During this time, you have something called the Harlem Renaissance. This is basically an African American movement, mainly in the South, also in parts of the North too, though, in which you have tons of talented African Americans as far as like singing, poetry, basically all those different qualities. Like I said before, jazz was very important, and one big thing of the Harlem Renaissance was the jazz movement. You have such famous people as Marcus Garvey, who wanted like African American nationalism. He thought that the nations of Africa should come together and form their own community, as it were, and instill pride in African American spirit, stuff like that. And you also have talented singers and writers, like I might have mentioned already, Langston Hughes, who has something called I Too Sing America, in which he goes over that the African American is part of America too, and what they have went through, and stuff like that. The last part of the 1920s is not a good thing. After from 1920, from when I started to about 1928, everything is fine. In 1928, you have the election of Herbert Hoover, and he wins. The only problem is, in 1929, as some might know, we had the stock market crash of 1929 in October. This really ends the Roaring '20s, and here we see America starting to go into the Great Depression at the 1930s. All the prosperity and all of the great things that happened in the 1920s, once the stock market crash of 1929 hits, it's basically like a run in the road, basically. You have a time for 10 years in which everything is fine, everything is great, economy is booming, you have great singers, great actors, great musicians, stuff like that. And then all of a sudden, October 1929, stock market crashes and wham, you're right into the Depression. The stock market crash in 1929 really ends the Roaring '20s for American history, in which we start getting into the Great Depression, in which you have, inflation, people can't afford their homes, and you have the Hoovervilles and stuff like that. So the stock market crash of 1929 really ends the Roaring '20s era.